Okay, let's just do some changes to the settings. Make sure all of the properties are about where we want them and get everything set up. So here we go. I'm in my file. I'm going to press Alt-H to show everything again. Let's just come down to our subframe and we will make sure all of the properties are, the starting properties are where we want them to be. And these are going to be kind of based on what we set up for the jalopy, the last section. All right, so let's just adjust this. Let's just zero out, or I guess we need to zero out our Excel. And let's zero out all that stuff first. Brake torque, let's make that 1500. Friction, oops. Friction, we want it 1. Mass factor is 1. Preload, let's make that 5000. Shock travel, let's make that 0.1. It's about 4 inches each way. Spring damping, let's make that 0.5. Spring stiffness, let's make that 10,000. Steering distance, let's make that 0.075, about 3 inches. Steering speed, we want that 10. Tire damping factor, we want that 0.1. Tire lateral factor, we want that to be 1. Tire longitudinal factor, 10 is a good value. Tire stiffness should be 500,000. We want the torque to be 1,000. We want the torsional damping. Let's make that more like 0.1. And this is going to be, so for our sway bar, let's make the torsional stiffness more like 1 million. So this should be pretty good starting values. Let's make sure our masses are all correct. Or our mass factors, I guess. Oh, first let's select our motor, both this one and the other one, and make sure that we have our target velocity correct, because I messed that up earlier. So it should be, and here it's messed up, so it should be -2 times speed divided by diameter. There we go. All right, and check this one. -2 times speed divided by diameter. All right, I messed that up earlier, and I think it's right this time. All right, let's check our masses. So let's come over here to, well, we'll start with our subframe. So our subframe should be 100 times. Let's make it active so we can see it, 100. So it should be 100. All right. Let's do our wheel. It should be 20. Our upright should be 20. Here's our upright. It is 20. Control arm should be 10. Steering links. Our steering link should be 10. Our steering rack should be 10. And our upper and lower shock little cubes here, they should be 10. They are. And that should be all the masses except for our sway bar. They are not even rigid bodies here, so that's bad. I'm not sure why that is. But let's copy those drivers and put them in here. Paste. Make this one a rigid body. And paste. Okay. All right, let's do a little organizational stuff here. I'm going to move this a little bit along the Y. Just kind of make them a little closer. And then we actually want those objects to be closer to the origin. So I'm going to move all of our space parts past it and then move everything down like that. Move these armatures somewhere over here. All right. Save that. All right, now let's do some mirroring. So we're gonna do, instead of mirroring after we get it into the project, we're just gonna go ahead and mirror it now. That'll make things a little bit easier. So let's do the wheel first. We're going to be very careful how we do this. So I'm going to take the main alignment sphere here, and I'm going to move it along the X. So it's about, a little under 1 meter out. Then I'm going to, with it still selected, I'm going to press Control Numpad Plus a bunch of times, select everything, then press Shift D, then Escape, and I'm going to make the X location negative so it mirrors it. And then I'm going to rotate it around about the Z 180 degrees. So R, Z 180. Okay, and the only thing we need to do now is just reverse our motor target velocity. So I'm going to take away the negative on that. And that should work. So we can test that. Let's take our wheel and move it along the X. Make sure our lattice is following along the Y and along the Z. And it looks like everything's working there, so that's good. Now let's add some copy constraints to these alignment spheres. So select this main alignment sphere, come over here to constraints, and we're going to do a copy location, and we're going to select this alignment sphere, make the X inverted. Okay, now let's do the same thing with this. Add a copy location constraint, move it to there, and invert it. This is kind of like what we did with the sway bar. Another note from the future here, for this inner empty, the main empty here, we need to add a copy scale. So just it already has a copy location, so add a copy scale and select the other one like that, and everything by default is correct. And that'll allow you to scale the wheel in all directions. Before that, it wouldn't allow you to scale the wheel correctly. So without it, it would scale it globally, but not for like one direction, for like the X direction. All right, I'm going to make a little adjustment to this control arm. I'm going to move it out a little bit, so it's more like 1/3 of a meter or so. Then move this in so that it'll fit in between the wheels, like that. And that looks pretty good. All right, let's do the control arm, or let's mirror it now. So let's actually select this main alignment sphere, and do Control plus plus plus, then do Shift D, Escape, make the X location negative. And then let's select this alignment sphere and do R, Z 180. And now we need the copy constraints for that one too. So let's select this one, and we'll do a copy location. We'll select this one, invert it, select this one, copy location constraint, select that one, invert the X, and this should be our last one. We need to do invert it. Okay, so now when we move one side, it moves both sides. Okay. Let's do the same thing with our shock here. So let's get into a top view, and we'll move it out so it's kind of more in line with the outer ball joint at the control arm. And let's just make it a little smaller too. I'm going to move it down along the Z. This one's pretty easy to mirror. Let's move it down a little bit so it's closer. And let's just select this main alignment sphere. Press Control plus a bunch of times, Shift D, Escape, and negative X. Okay, now we need our copy constraints, copy location, that one, invert it, this one, copy location, this one, there we go. Okay, save it. All right, let's do our steering. So the non-independent steering is pretty easy. We just want to select this ball joint, press Shift D, press Escape, and then make the location negative. And that's pretty much it. But let's make it a little smaller too. So G, X, and we'll align it with about where the shock and control arm are. So that looks good. Let's do one other thing though, because generally when we have this, we'll want some steering axles. So let's select our steering axle here. And let's move it to this right here. So I'm going to move my cursor there. Shift S, cursor. Then let's select this steering. Shift D. And then Shift S, selection to cursor. All right. And then let's move this down a little bit to about right there. And select it all, or select this one, Control ++, then press Shift D to copy it, escape, and we'll put a negative sign in front of there. All right, and let's add some copy constraints to this. So copy location, this one, invert it, this one, and invert it. There we go. All right, so that should work, and that should work. All right, independent steering is a little more involved. Not too bad. We're just going to mirror each one individually. So I'm going to select this one, this ball joint. Shift D, escape, make it negative. Take the steering link, rigid body, Shift D, escape, negative. And the outer ball joint, Shift D, escape, negative. Oops. Make the X negative. There we go. Okay, now we have all those. Oh, let's get an armature. All right, here's our armatures. Shift D, and let's rotate it RZ 180. All right, and let's move it to right here. Shift S, selection to active. Shift S, selection to active. All right, let's parent this outer ball joint to this steering link. Okay, Control P, keep transform. We want to parent this steering link to the bone of the armature. So select the armature, go into pose mode, select this main bone, Control P, and bone. Okay, parent this main alignment sphere to the main bone of the main armature. So select this armature, go into pose mode, select this bone, Control P, bone. Go back into object mode. All right, let's make sure our connections are correct. So let's select this outboard ball joint. Come down here, and we don't want that steering link. We want this copied one. Same thing for this. We do want it connected to the steering rack, but not the first steering link. So this steering link. Okay. And let's do a copy constraint for this one. Copy location, this one, invert the X, and I think that should be it. So let's see if this works. So you can move that, and this works a little weird, but really we're only going to want to move this along the X axis, like this. So when we move it, we'll move it like along the Y with this, and then we'll adjust how wide it is. Oops. This, and then the steering links can go anywhere. So it seems to be working correctly. Let's make it a little more reasonable scale. So let's move this in to about right there. Move this in to about right there. And that's a little more reasonable scale. All right, let's save that. All right, let's just go through all this. I'm going to space these things out a little bit. So they're not on top of each other quite as bad. Okay, there we go. And let's just make sure everything is in the right collection also. So I'm gonna select all of our sway bar, move it into collection. All of our independent steering, move it there. I'm gonna move all of this into steering. Here is our shocks. And here's our control arms. And here's our wheel assembly.